Hi guys, how are you? Having a good day? Hanging out with your friends? Just kidding, at home? With your families? Working? Taking a break? Welcome to my channel. It's round 4, and as promised in my last stream, I said that I would get the Instagram live from Lauren, where she talks about these products that she wants people to buy, and I have that ready. I'll be getting that uploaded. It's uploaded. I will be putting that public here in a few minutes, so that you can make your decision on what you think about it. If you missed my live stream about Hobby Marroquin's fiance Lauren, make sure that you check it out. It has we talked about some things that she's doing right now that has some of the fans kind of irritated. Anyways, but since this channel loves sister wives, I actually wanted to dive into something, and I wanted to let you guys know first that tomorrow we will be doing, I always think of we on this channel because it's like you and me, so it's like this we, but I will be doing an interview with Melissa Ellis, who is with the Sound Choices Coalition, a nonprofit in Utah that works for advocacy and legislation in the state of Utah surrounding polygamy. And she has agreed to sit down for an interview and sort of talk through some of the legalities of what we are looking at with the Browns, and some sort of the impacts, and talk about some of the really big legislation that's going on right now in the state of Utah, and what those impacts could mean for families like the Browns in the state. But on this specific topic, I thought what better place to get the information from was from Melissa. So I apologize. I was a couple minutes late because I was asking her a couple questions because I saw this tweet by Janelle and I wanted to talk about it. So on this season of Sister Wives, we know that this whole idea about building a house has been the biggest storyline. We are 10 episodes in, and almost every single episode except for this past one has been surrounding them building on Coyote Pass. Are they, aren't they, will they, won't they? And a lot of it has been surrounding about, first it was the one house idea. Now it's, are Robyn and Kody going to buy? Or are they going to rent? They're going to have to buy because there's nothing to rent. But Mary found a rental and Janelle found a rental. So why can't Robyn find a rental? And there's been a lot of back and forth. And at one point in last week's episode 9, he actually made the comment that, if he had to, he would dissolve the partnership with Robyn and purchase the home without her. Well, we did some digging, or I did some digging, and I learned that the state of Arizona is a community property state, meaning that as a married man, he is not able to actually purchase property without his wife signing on the title. Doesn't matter if she's not on the mortgage, but she has to be on the title. And so therefore, if they're buying a property, she would have to agree to do it. When he said that he wanted to potentially dissolve the partnership, that meant I want to divorce you so that I can buy this house, and then you're standing in the way of me wanting to do this, so I'll just do that. Well, some people were starting to wonder if maybe the issues going on here are way more than just him divorcing her, but maybe there's like all these different strains on what happens with the what happens with all these properties. Like, are the other ladies on these properties? Well, we also learned last week that it doesn't matter in the state of Arizona, no matter what. If Robyn is married to Kody, which they are, anything that he owns, if he were to say pass away or divorce, she is responsible for 50%. Well, if they were to divorce, she is still responsible for 50% of all of the debt. Meaning that if he has mortgages and he has properties with, say, Janelle, Mary, or Christine, if they divorce, she's responsible for that debt even if she's not on it, because she's married to him and it's a community property state. So she took a humongous chance and really, she's put herself in sort of this predicament, where he has all of this property, yet she is half the responsible owner for it as his legal wife. So some people were thinking, well, wouldn't it just be easier for them to divorce? Wouldn't this make situations better for the family? So this user on on Twitter says, question Janelle, why doesn't Robyn and Kody divorce, and then he wouldn't be a married man, and then it wouldn't be legal and really make your lives a bit easier? Love, your family. So I'm assuming part of it is that, there's this whole like umbrella where, it's not legal in any of the 50 states to be married to multiple women, even though he's only married to one wife. Legally, he's technically says that he has 4 wives. Spiritual unions are not recognized. However, cohabitation laws in the state of Utah do make it a penalty if you are cohabitating with someone that you recognize as a wife and you also have a legal wife. So that's where in and of itself it gets tricky. She says the law in Utah, at least as of now, counts spiritual marriages. We are looking forward to the governor of Utah to sign a new legislation that will be remarkable, hopefully any day. Now, the legislation that she is talking about in this situation is that the governor, the Utah legislatures have just promoted a bill which has been signed. It has been passed by the Senate and the House in the state of Utah, and it would reduce the actual penalty of someone that practices polygamy. So currently in the state of Utah, it is a felony, and it is, I believe, if someone's prosecuted, people can go away for like up to 5 years, I believe. But this new legislation would actually reduce that to an infraction, which would be similar to a traffic ticket. It still is not legal at all federally. So it's illegal federally, and it's actually a felony federally. But in the state of Utah, they are trying to remove it from being a felony to an infraction, which has people that are not supportive of the practice really outraged, obviously knowing that there's been a lot of people, a lot of different situations, a lot of welfare and Medicaid fraud, and then there's been all these things about, leaders doing things like, think Kingston Clan, think Warren Jeffs. There's people that are doing good things here. There's a lot of stuff that's not good about this whole dynamic. Well, Janelle and their family, they moved from Utah because they claimed they were under investigation. Well, since then, they aren't in Utah now, so I'm not sure why she's bringing this up in Utah, because they live in Arizona. So either one, they're planning to eventually move back to Utah, meaning this whole stint that they're doing in Arizona, this dog and pony dance they're doing about housing, is all for show, or she thinks she lives in Utah still. I don't know, but why she's bringing up laws in Utah doesn't make sense to me, since she hasn't lived in Utah in at least 6 years or 7 years. Unless they plan to move back, which would then mean, why are they planning to move back and then purchasing all this property in Arizona? So what I did was I wanted to know, like, what is she talking about? What's legal? What's not legal? And I asked Melissa Ellis with the Sound Choices Coalition, and she said that in terms of the law, no religious marriage is actually recognized by the state of Utah, and the state of Utah doesn't even have a common law marriage law. So in terms of Janelle actually having any legal rights to Kody, her marriage is nothing to the state of Utah. They don't consider her a wife. They don't consider her, she can't go to an ICU if she's sick. She can't sign as his, power of attorney. She can't make legal decisions for him if he were to get sick. She is also not, if something were unless he has a trust, and if he were to pass away, she has no rights to any of the property in which he owns. She has no rights to any of the assets that he has. All of that would go to Robyn, along with all of the debt would go to Robyn. So in the law, Janelle is literally nothing. She's basically a girlfriend. Okay, but Utah also has a really strict cohabitation law. And so this is what she might be talking about, how she says that spiritual marriages count. But this new legislation is not changing this part of it. So she said there's new legislation that will be remarkable. It doesn't change that her marriage would still be counted in terms of polygamy. It just changes it from a felony to an infraction. So according to a website, it was a podcast I found. This individual said, named Sarah Ventre, she said that polygamy is illegal all over the country, including Arizona. It's actually specifically mentioned in the Arizona Constitution that says polygamous or plural marriages or polygamous cohabitation are forever prohibited within the state. So even in the state of Arizona where they live, it's prohibited. So I don't know why she's talking about Utah. They literally live in Arizona. It's illegal to be married to more than one person in the state. So they then talked to someone named Claudia Work, who works in Phoenix and specializes in unmarried cohabitation. And she said, under the state of Arizona, most states in the United States, there's something more than just the exchanging of vows that's necessary for a marriage to become legal. Most states require a marriage license to be issued. That would mean, this is Sarah Ventry talking, she said that would mean that you're not actually breaking the bigamy laws unless you go through a second legal marriage. With most people, that is not the case. So he's not technically breaking a bigamy law. However, they said typically when someone is in a polygamous relationship, they have one legal marriage and then the other marriages are considered spiritual, meaning that they have religious or personal significance but no legal bearing. But in Utah, cohabitating with people who you claim to be your spiritual spouse is illegal. And she said that the penalty there is harsher than other places. Critics of the law would say it's oppressive and specifically designed to go after the fundamentalist Mormons like the Browns who practice plural marriage. So would him and Robyn divorcing actually change anything with their family dynamic? Not necessarily, but there's two things. Her marriage legally is not recognized at all. So again, Janelle has no rights to anything. And if Kody did divorce Robyn and that was the only wife left, then Melissa told me, she said, Utah does have laws that if a couple lives together and has a relationship as husband and wife, they do look at it as a marriage, but for the purposes of prosecuting polygamy. It doesn't do anything other than that, though, she said. If they aren't legally married and he was in the ICU, because they aren't legally married, they wouldn't be allowed to see him. She also said that if he did divorce her, then yes, he wouldn't be married to anyone. But then again, if he did pass away and he doesn't have a trust, and then his assets would go to his children and then not to the wives. There's a lot of financial issues going on here. And whoever is married to him legally holds so much responsibility by allowing him to have all these other relationships. Think about that. So Robyn has to be okay with the fact that he has mortgages with other women and that she is ultimately, even though she doesn't pay for it now, responsible for that legally. She is responsible for 50% of the debt that he has with all of those other women. So technically, yes, divorcing Robyn doesn't change the fact that they could still be prosecuted for polygamy. It does matter that he at least have one wife to have access to the assets, to have access to choices. But then part of me thinks, like, is she saying this believing that her spiritual, marriage actually counts? Because it doesn't. In the state of Utah, her marriage to Kody means nothing. In the state of Arizona, her marriage to Kody means nothing. There's no legal no legal contract between the two of these people. She has no access to his will. She would not get any access to his benefits, to his pensions if he had one. If he had any sort of military benefits, if he had any, all of the rights that you receive when you become the spouse of someone, none of these women have. They are nothing more than a girlfriend, a glorified girlfriend that has created a lot of children with him so that they can build their celestial kingdom. But I would think as Robyn or any of these wives that being the actual legal wife would be such a burden. I would not want to have that responsibility. So that's just me. But tomorrow on this, I feel like the Browns, before I go off on that, I feel like the Browns like to spend a lot of their time in these half-truths. The spiritual marriage would still be an issue. Well, really the issue here isn't so much these spiritual marriages, because let's be honest, Utah rarely prosecutes polygamy at all. It's very rarely prosecuted. But what is prosecuted is all the fraud that happens because of it and abuse. And so we can say, yes, we're breaking the law by practicing polygamy, but in terms of the law, they care more about the fact that Kody has 18 children with 4 different wives who he can't even claim. He can only claim the wives can't be claimed as his dependents. Only one of the wives is claimed as his dependent on taxes. The rest of the wives, when they're filing their taxes, they are filing independently. He can only be technically head of household in one household. So any of these other wives, they're on the hook for everything in terms of it, but then he owns it. It's just every aspect of what they do, they're breaking the law in some way. And I feel like TLC really downplays that because they get benefits by her claiming that she's single when she's technically not. And it allowed them, before they went on the air, to actually receive welfare and food stamps and all kinds of subsidies. All of them have declared bankruptcy at one point or another. So there's a lot of fraud that happens here. And it really grinds me that they get stuck on this idea that, like, if this bill passes in Utah, suddenly it's going to be legal. It's not going to be legal. It'll reduce it from a felony to a fraction, but the United States of America, the federal government, still says that what they're doing every single day is a felony. So, what do you think? Does a divorce matter in this case? What's her point here? I mean, I do believe if Robyn would not have allowed him to buy that house, he would have divorced her. 100%. So do you think he would, in this situation, do you agree with her that it doesn't matter if he divorces her because it's not going to change their situation? And can you imagine being one of these wives and having no legal recourse at all? Knowing that you have all these children that would never, ever be provided for at all. And that if something were to happen to him, you can't do anything. You're not in the doctor's office. You're not his power of attorney. You can't make decisions for him. You don't get access to any of his assets. Nothing. That's why you can't really call them wives. All right, you guys. So I would like to hear what your thoughts are. Tell me, do you think it would matter? Do you think it would not matter? And if there are any specific questions, this is what I'm going to go back to. I'm going to be interviewing Melissa Ellis tomorrow, who is amazing. She was actually part of the Kingston clan, who was the part of the group that does the order that was on escaping polygamy. And she's tomorrow going to join us and talk about some of the legal components of polygamy, as well as sort of deciphering some of these untruths I feel like we're given by the Browns as fact. She's going to tell us the reality because she's today going to be sitting down with the governor of Utah to talk about why he shouldn't pass this bill, or he shouldn't sign this bill. So if you are not in favor of this bill being passed in Utah and signed by the governor, think good thoughts for Melissa today as she sits down with him at 4:30 Mountain Time. And or if you're the praying type, say a prayer for Melissa and wish her the best of luck. As always, leave me any questions that you might have or you might want me to ask Melissa tomorrow, and I will be back later. Bye, guys.